This is the Just Baseball Show for Thursday, April 13th. Jack Aram, we're going to talk you through some guys that are set to make their big league debuts tonight. We're recording on Wednesday afternoon in Taj Bradley and Edouard Julien. Also a really interesting article in The Athletic from Ken Rosenthal that I saw in regards to the quote-unquote momentum lead. Everybody's got a different name for it, but this is, not necessarily a new thing, but it is the sexy thing in baseball right now. Arm just got a lot brighter visual.
Yeah, speaking of sexy, just put the ring light on for those watching on YouTube.
You're hot as hell, man.
Yes, that was a big investment for me. There was a couple of comments about like how extra dark I looked. One that was like bordering on a little bit a little bit questionable on YouTube, but it did spark a thought, and I'm like, yeah, I look like I'm like recording in a cave. So I wanted to, get some lighting in here. So back in New York, got the ring light rocking.
Well, that probably fits your mojo, right? That fits kind of your personality if you were to be recording in a cave, but it is beautiful in New York City right now. It was like 70 degrees and sunny at first pitch. You wouldn't know because you're working on a mammoth project right now. Fill us in, baby.
It's done. Top 100 is done. By the time you're listening to this, it is out. You can go to justbaseball.com and go check that out. I have been doing that all day today. Those, again, watching on YouTube can probably just I look a little extra disheveled today. So when I joined the Zoom, I was like shoveling pizza in my mouth while you were just looking at me after you just called a whole game and had like a whole productive day. But this was in a different way productive for me. Really pumped for everyone to check out the top 100 though. A lot of new names with a lot of notable prospects graduating with this list kind of coming out a week or so into the season. It allowed me to kind of put in a lot of new names. So we're going to have a Just Baseball Show episode where we talk about the takeaways from it. But if you can't wait for that, definitely go check out the top 100.
Yes, 100%. And on the call up, our prospect podcast, we're going to be going in batches of 20. So 100 through 81 coming today, dropping, and then 80 through 61, so on and so forth. The last one will be 20 through 1, as you could guess, which is pretty cool. I just called an 11 a.m. first pitch, 11:05.
Yeah.
How do you think the players feel about that? It's a baseball and education day. So it's like a lot of the local elementary, middle schools will take a field trip out to the ballpark, and it's presented by IUPUI. So you've got a bunch of kids there. I think we had 7,000 people at that game today, which was a good crowd for, Wednesday at 11 a.m. But how do you think leadoff man playing right field feels about the 11:05 first pitch?
Hey, it's so funny. I was just talking about this with my mom. When I was down home, she was driving me to the airport, and I was just telling her about how much I appreciated her driving me to all those summer tournaments, in Fort Myers or wherever. And I always would say, it's very cliche about how you don't know you're living the best part of your life or you're living the dream until afterwards. Those tournaments, we used to want to lose. I wanted to get out of there. It was hot, whatever, but we had so much fun. You played baseball, then you went to the movies or an arcade or whatever. And it was a blast from age 13 to 17, 18. But the one part I hated was waking up because you had 9 a.m.ers or 8 a.m.ers in those tournaments because they had to pack it in. There was no worse feeling than waking up at 7 in the morning in your Holiday Inn, going to the ballpark. And there was times where I'm in the box, the morning dew still on the grass, and I'm still wiping the crust out of my eyes. So I know it's a little different at 11, but you're a professional baseball player that at this point has not played probably before 12 or 1 really at all. Besides this special occasion, it must have been miserable. How was the offense out of the gate?
It was slow, but it was also Luis Ortiz against Bailey Ober, which was
it's pretty good
matchup. Although Baylor went Bailey Ober went 6 shutty with 6 punch outs and no walks. So he looked great. I feel like he might be pitching a little pissed off right now because obviously they add Pablo. You've got a healthy Kenta Maeda. There's no space for Ober. And I've given Ober shit on the pod in recent years. But I mean, that guy is a major league pitcher. He's just being stiff-armed out of that rotation because the Twins are really freaking good, man. And they just made a massive addition. Gallo was good. Gallo is hurt now. He's going to rehab in Indy in the coming days. But, I mean, dude, they just call up Edouard Julien last night, which is really cool. And Julien's a guy that we're going to be talking about in that 100 through 81 grouping on the call-up. You'll see him on the top 100 prospects. Julien, just like the primer, if you're going to tune in to a Twins game over the next week or so, you're going to see a guy that I think more effectively than anybody else in baseball right now is leaning into the new school. This fucker doesn't swing.
No, I've never seen someone swing less, actually. I don't think I've ever seen anyone swing less. He swung a little bit more in 2023 so far, and as a result, he's actually struck out a little bit more than we saw him in the past, but also he was, adjusting to AAA. But going over the 2022 sample size, Edouard Julien swung 35% of the time. And like for reference, I think Tim Anderson probably swings close to 60% of the time. Like we're talking about some players in Major League Baseball, aggressive, to be fair, swing almost twice as much as Edouard Julien. So Julien is looking for one pitch, one spot. And then with 2 strikes, he's got confidence in himself. Of course, you're going to go into a lot of 2-strike counts. You're going to strike out a little bit. So that's something that he's always going to do. You're also going to walk a bunch. That's also something he's going to do. So he's very 3 true outcome type. But I don't know if I've seen anybody pummel fastballs the way Julien does. We've talked about it on the call up. This guy's going to crush mistakes. He's going to crush fastballs. He's going to be great in a platoon role. He's probably not going to face many lefties. If he could defend at all, he'd be a top 50 prospect in baseball. I think we're probably the only publication that'll have him in the top 100, and he's in the back end of our top 100. Yeah. And it's just because of how good the approach is and how hard he hits fastballs.
Yeah. So for reference, in Major League Baseball last year, so 2022, there were 5 guys that swung at less than 40% of the pitches they saw. Juan Soto, 35%, because nobody was pitching to him. Steven Kwan, we freaking love Steven Kwan, man, because when he swings, he's making contact. Trent Grisham, Max Muncy, DJ LeMahieu.
Muncy was my comp. That was going to be like my comp for him.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect comp for Julien. And Julien, okay, doesn't swing, right? 35% swing rate last year. He hit 300 with a 440 OBP.
Yeah, fastballs. So it'll be harder to do that, in the big leagues when they got the scouting report. They're going to give him more hammers. But I've never seen a guy not miss a fastball like Edouard Julien. Like it's unbelievable. When he pulls a trigger on a heater, he hits it. Last year against fastballs, 390, 540, 650 slash line. And what's even more nuts about it, if you cue by higher velocity, his numbers get better. So against 95 plus last season, this was a 110 plate appearance sample size, 450, 630, 824, 8 home runs. That's a 1450 OPS against fastballs 95 plus. Even if he can't hit lefties, even if he has struggles with breaking balls, that alone will allow him to be a productive big league hitter. And I think it was part of the reason, very different player than Luis Arraez, who I want to talk about in a moment. But I think that was part of the reason why they were okay with moving Arraez, because they knew they had another left-handed bat that they can kind of, plug into the lineup that's going to be extremely productive for them, especially against righties. Different kind of productive, but at the end of the day, it's all about production, not how you get it.
Yeah, and Julien had an excellent WBC for Canada. He's from Quebec City. He went from Quebec to Auburn, and he apparently hardly knew English, and he just said yes to every single question. That was a great article on MLB.com. So he was just saying yes, like, do you want to play first? Do you want to play second? Yes, yes. Like he would just play, anywhere in the infield because all he said was yes. So he's learned a bit more English. He has always spoken the language of hitting, and he's going to get a chance to show it in Minnesota. Now, one last Minnesota question before we move to Luis Arraez hitting the first cycle in Marlins history. Minnesota, as I cue up my Joe Biden impression. Minnesota, they and Cleveland both have 7 wins. You think Minnesota has a shouting chance to take this division?
Yes. I said it before the season. So that, I was in on Minnesota before the season. 11 games is small sample size theater. So not much has changed, but I definitely feel good. You're looking at a team that I think is only going to get stronger. Only thing that makes me nervous is pitching staff health, right? Pablo Lopez injury concerns, and with his shoulder. Sonny Gray has dealt with injuries. Tyler Mahle dealt with injuries. That said, and Kenta Maeda is coming back from an injury as well. They have so much depth that hedges that. And then Pablo Lopez, yeah, he was shut down at the very end of last year, kind of dealt with a little bit of stuff, but finished strong and still threw 180 innings. Like that's the new norm. That's still pretty good. I think they're going to manage things well. That's my only concern, but offensively, they're going to get Royce Lewis back. They just called up Julien. Jorge Polanco hasn't even been playing.
Yeah.
Like they still have a bunch of dudes that can plug and play and they can ride the hot hand. And that's not even mentioning Trevor Larnach looks like a
he looks
stud.
great.
Yeah.
Great. So the thing that initially, I guess, held me back about Minnesota was I was doubting how good the top end of the Minnesota rotation could be. And the answer is better than I think I was anticipating. Like Pablo Lopez looked like Pablo did at the beginning of last year for Miami. He looks great. He's got a sub one through his first 3 starts, right?
Yep. And he's pacing the league in innings. So the Twins, this is what you do when you trade for a player. You ID a player that you can, maybe get at a fair value. Obviously, they got him at a really great value, and identify maybe a way that you can make him better. And I think they saw Pablo Lopez. It was always the problem was fastball changeup, right? And if one of those pitches isn't there, you're going to get knocked around a little bit. So he'd have those blow-up starts. He's added this sweeper, which we've seen, take baseball by storm. Right. And even though it's not, an elite sweeper, no one's really hit it because everyone's worried about fastball changeup. It's just enough of that change of pace. And I think that could be the difference. We talked about like breaking ball was all Pablo needed. That could be the difference for him from being the number 3 type to more like that high end 2, which he's looked like a high end 2.
He has looked like a high end 2. I brought this up on, I want to say yesterday's show or 2 days ago. Pablo Lopez right now is like the same narrative that we had about Framber Valdez last year, where it's like he has the ability to be the best 2 in baseball. And that's what Pablo's doing. We haven't addressed it on the Just Baseball show. And I know that a lot of people have been asking on, social media platforms and all that, what the hell is a sweeper? And we kind of got an answer from Colby.
Yeah.
And Colby said it's all about pitch profile. So a sweeper, if you see that, it's not a new pitch. We didn't reinvent the wheel. It is a slider with more horizontal break than your typical slider. And that's the definition of a sweeper.
Yes. So it's funny because effective pitchers were accidentally throwing sweepers before, right? Like that was their slider. And so what happened is those guys tended to be very good. And it's funny because for me, when I'm looking at prospects and I'm able to get some of the pitch profiles, I started to just kind of jot down the commonalities over the last couple of years of like breaking ball shapes. And it's funny because none of them were labeled in the systems that I look at as sweepers. They were just sliders, but they were so different movement profile wise. And people way smarter than me with way more technology than me, I guess, ran crazy simulations to see what was the most effective pitch shape and the sweeper was. What's funny is I was looking back at a lot of the notes I jotted and a lot of the most effective breaking balls that I'd continue to write down and be like, this is unique. This is unique. It's no longer unique because everyone saw that and they're now doing it. And that's welcome to the world of sports, specifically baseball. There'll be a new pitch that'll be in vogue next. But I think just based on what we're seeing in baseball, just with the way that you have to process a pitch, the way that pitch breaks is just impossible to try to hit when you've got a guy with a riding fastball and then a sweeper off of that. So we're seeing that pitch just be very effective to both lefties and righties as well. So it makes you more impervious to splits. And we're seeing the Yankees take every Yankees pitcher they try to teach the sweeper to. Shohei Ohtani has now adjusted his slider to more of a sweeper. Look at what it's done for him. Yeah. Not everybody can do it, but when you have the talent to do it, it can really be a difference maker.
Pitch design is really cool. And that's an aspect that I think is, it's not brand new. People have been doing it forever. They've been trying things like, hey, your teammate throws a great splitter. Let me learn that. But altering your arsenal and finding a tweak to a pitch that is already major league caliber to make it all-star caliber, I think is really rearing its head. And now we can cut and dry label that pitch design. And pitch design is where we are. Like baseball pitching is on the cutting edge right now, which is really, really cool. You mentioned the Yankees being innovators. So I want to circle back to the Yankees and a good article from Ken Rosenthal. But let's jump to Arraez now with the Marlins. I mean, we're just talking about this trade, man. Is this trade the Halliburton-Sabonis thing?
Yeah, it is. 100% is. Like, and like, there's going to be ebbs and flows probably, throughout time, like I'm sure. But it's so funny to me because one of the few things I've like waged war on a facet of Marlins fans about was the complaining about trading prospect Jose Salas on top of, Pablo Lopez in this deal. Of course, Pablo Lopez pitching the way he's pitching is pretty nuts. And you could make the case that, hey, it should have been 1-for-1. Probably should have, or at least have just been Brian Chorio, the other guy that they threw in there in the deal. Yes, should they have probably kept Salas? Sure. But if that's the sticking point, if the Twins were willing to walk away, I'm trading Salas in 2 seconds. And I assume that that's what it was. I was going nuts because it drives me crazy how fans are so desperate for offense, want to see better bats. They go get a guy that is the best bat that they've had in a very long time. And then they're complaining about a 19-year-old prospect that they gave up who has not played above high A and hasn't even put up good numbers in high A. That aside, Luis Arraez, I have no idea how he is so good. Like it's incredible the way he is able to get to any pitch. I just saw Fish Stripes put together something of like all of his hits so far this season. It's high, it's low, it's inside, it's outside. The only kryptonite for Luis Arraez is left-handed pitching. And that's fine. You know that. You leave it at that. A righty, you have no game plan to get this guy out. 4,700 games in Marlins franchise history. The first cycle was hit by Luis Arraez. With all of the talent they've had through the years, all of the bizarre stadium alignment between the two of them, right? It seems perfect breeding ground for a cycle. No one's done it. Luis Arraez does it in his 12th game as a Marlin. It just kind of shows you, I think that's a microcosm of what this guy brings to the table for what is an anemic offense.
Yeah, 100%, man. And like, we can keep referencing the Bugatti and the trailer park and all that. But, Arraez, I'm trying to figure out if I have to stan one, because I like standing both. And my original stan was Brendan Donovan. I was like, this guy is my ride or die. Now I'm thinking Arraez may take over. I'm not sure. Is it acceptable to be Arraez and Donovan truther?
Yeah, I think they're very different. I do. I think they're very different. If you could combine Arraez and Donovan, I think you'd have the most electric player in baseball. Arraez's bat to ball skills with just being able to play all over the diamond. I mean, that's the one thing with Arraez is the defense. But this guy's already accumulated a 1 F-WAR. Like he's already a full win. So that kind of just shows you what the Twins were reluctant to give up. And I think it's interesting. I think both fan bases are looking at the performance of another player and saying, oh man, I got a tweet though, which was funny, from somebody that said, I'm kind of new to baseball. Is it normal for two teams to win a trade like this? Like for it to be so mutually beneficial? I said, well, first of all, it's rare to even see a big leaguer for big leaguer trade. Typically, if you're rebuilding, if you're trading a controllable big leaguer, you want a ton of volume, right? You want 4 prospects. You want 3 high upside prospects. Big leaguer for big leaguer trades don't happen anymore. So 1, it was crazy to just see that. 2, it was crazy to see it so far work out so well for both teams. Obviously means a lot more for the Twins, who are a more competitive ball club. Right. But it is cool to see 2 teams kind of do well in a trade like that.
Do-Young Park, who is the Twins beat writer for MLB.com, grabbed this from Pablo after Pablo's start, and Arraez hit for the cycle when Pablo started. And he said Pablo had already heard that Luis Arraez has hit the first cycle in Marlins history when he talked to us after his start. From Lopez, quote, such a good guy. I'm happy it was him. So they fucking like each other too.
No, dude. They're apparently, I haven't met Arraez. I've been able to interact, been fortunate enough to interact with Pablo a couple of times in the clubhouse. Pablo is one of the nicest dudes I've ever met in a professional setting ever, like in any professional setting. He is the absolute man. And apparently Arraez is the same way. So it's just amazing. Like they're all so great people. So you always love to see that. Endlessly rooting for Pablo. Absolute man. Like he is the dude. I hope he gets to pitch a postseason game. I really do. Cause he's the man.
One of your favorite follows on Twitter has quickly become one of my favorite follows on Twitter, @PastyA, Alex Ferrer. He's an elite Marlins troller. He's a very cynical Marlins fan.
You have to be.
He will absolutely hop on the bandwagon when they're good. Like he is all aboard the Luis Arraez hype train. And he tweeted, because like he's got this love-hate affair with Kim Ng. I'm sure every Marlins fan has a love-hate affair with Kim Ng. And he tweeted after the cycle, Luis Arraez has saved Kim Ng from any slander until May. He is fucking incredible.
I mean, you gotta give her credit. It's a good move. It's a good move. We'll see if they extend him, but Kim's made some good moves. She's made some bad ones. She's kind of sat on her hands in a couple other spots, but she's made some good moves. You gotta give her credit.
No, I love the Arraez deal. I love the Puck deal for them for Blade. Like that was just good, man. I think Kim Ng is a good GM. I think you got to give her some more time, and she had to have a bit more freedom. She didn't have much freedom in the Jeter era. Like we talked about that. And now I think she's got the keys to the Corvette, and she can turn that into a Bentley if she wants. So we'll see what happens. Although I don't think the Marlins will ever be allowed to spend enough to turn that thing into a luxury car. But I want to talk about the Yankees and this article on The Athletic from Ken Rosenthal. And it's all about the implementation of the quote unquote momentum lead. Everybody's got like a different name for it. It might be like a hop lead, things like that. And the gist is this: it's been around for a really long time. It went away. Mike Roberts, who is the base running coordinator for the Pirates and somebody that you know well, the manager of the Katuitt Kettleers in the Cape Cod Baseball League, he is a teacher of it as well. And if you've watched Aaron Judge steal any bases recently, he stole 16 last year. He does this hop right before the secondary lead. That's how Anthony Volpe stole 50 bags in the minor leagues as well. The Yankees are leading. Their base running coordinator, and I'm blanking on his name, is kind of leading the charge here, and a lot of teams are following suit. But explain to me what this momentum lead is.
Yeah, so this was something that kind of took over minor league baseball specifically over the last couple of years. But now that especially when you had the minor league rules kind of implemented too with pickoff limitations, because the pickoff limitations really help this to set the stage here. So basically, pitcher comes set. You have your normal lead, which is a little bit shorter than you probably normally do. And then you take that shuffle just before you think the pitcher is going to go to home. So you might be a little early. And if you are early on your shuffle, you still feel like, and I was talking to a minor leaguer, actually, JD Orr, about this. Marlins organization, awesome guy. One of the best base stealers in the minor leagues over the last several years. He does this. And something that he said about it was, I asked him, like, how do you not get picked off if you're taking a big shuffle step before he even pitches? What if he throws over? He said, I feel like the only way I can get picked off is if he does it when I'm in the air, because my initial lead is short. My shuffle, I still feel like from where I land on my shuffle, I can get back to the bag. So it's a science. You got to really have it worked out, almost exactly as far as you can go with the shuffle. But the shuffle gives you enough momentum that if he does go home with it right after, you can get to second base really easily. Really, the only way that this bites you in the butt, and guys will get picked off from time to time, is, again, if the pitcher can time it up where he is picking over to first right as you do your momentum shuffle. It'll happen from time to time, but it really isn't something that happens frequently enough because it's too hard for the pitcher to know when that shuffle is going to come. Benefits the base runner way more. And there's a disincentive to throw over now, because if you do it 3 times, he automatically goes over. So if you draw a throw, the next time the pitcher doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to throw over as much. And if there's a second throw, then you really know he doesn't want to throw over, and you can feel a bit more confident about that momentum lead.
Yeah, so Matt Tallarico is the director of speed development and base running. Director of speed development is a fucking sick job.
I'd want it like a shirt for that, honestly.
Yes, I'm the director.
I am speed.
Parentheses development. But Matt Tallarico is the guy that is, doing this with the Yankees. He is the base running coordinator pretty much for the Yankees. Couple notes from this article from Ken Rosenthal. It is available at The Athletic. I'm not going to read huge snippets here because it's behind a paywall for a reason. You should subscribe to The Athletic because they put together the best baseball journalism that is behind a paywall, because we put the best baseball journalism out there.
That is not behind a paywall.
But Mike Roberts used to refer to it as a, quote, jump lead, now refers to it as a shuffle lead. But this is a really interesting note here that I think sums it up best. Bruce Chattel, I want to say Shatel, was the head coach at Del Barton, which is a high school baseball power in New Jersey. He was Volpe's coach, which is where Volpe learned it. And then he was also Jack Leiter's coach at the Del Barton school. And he put it like this, quote, if you're in a Ferrari at a stoplight and I'm in my Toyota, but I roll into that stop and you're at a dead stop, I'm going to beat you off the line 100 times out of 100. That's the perfect way to put it.
That's the best way to describe it right there. It really is. And I don't know if I'm going to take the analogy too far, but again, you feel like even if you're rolling into that stop, that you can stop in enough time as a base runner. So like that's the thing too, is there's a lot of reward, not as much risk. And that's at the end of the day, like that's what base running is. Base stealing specifically is a risk reward proposition, right? I'm going to try to take the extra 90 feet because I feel confident I'm going to make it. And we talk about like base stealing efficiency. You're running a risk. You're risking getting thrown out every single time you run for it. So if you feel like you are swaying the odds a little bit more in your favor by doing this, more reward, a little bit more risk too, but the reward outweighs it. It's a no-brainer. And that's why we're seeing it take over baseball. And I think we're going to see a lot more do it. I will say one minor leaguer that I had speak to me about it, that had his organization kind of had him not do it as much. They're not as forward thinking as the Yankees.
Got it. That is fair. I understand that. All right. Real quick.
So, yeah.
Fair. Real quick, a Shohei Ohtani update for you before we get to the debut of Taj Bradley, which we are expecting here. Ohtani on the year now is 2-0, 19 innings, 24 punch outs, has a 0.47 ERA after he threw the front seven of a shutout win over the Nats on Tuesday night. Ohtani, 7 innings, a 1-hit ball, punched out 6, did walk 5, but no runners came in. Ohtani does look like a guy that can win the American League Cy Young. We obviously know what he does offensively. Whenever we can give an Ohtani update, I want to, because what this guy's doing on the mound is, I think, more impressive than what he does at the plate. And if he had to do one, obviously the beauty of Ohtani is he does both. If he had to do one, I think this guy is one of the best pitchers in baseball, full stop. Doesn't matter that he hits.
It's amazing because we talk about, like, you know, with Jack Flaherty, like the walks and you know, not giving up hits. He's actually walked a fair amount of guys. Shohei Ohtani has, but he's allowed 6 hits thus far?
Yeah, 19 innings.
Yeah. So that's what stands out to me. 24 Ks, 6 hits. You're really not going to hit Shohei Ohtani at this point. I think it's pretty clear. Because if he's doing what he is doing right now, which is a 0.95 whip, despite walking way more than he normally does, you assume the walks go down a little bit. This guy's going to run away with the Cy Young if he continues this. Obviously, it's a long way to go. It's a marathon. But I think that is very interesting that, you know, you're looking at a guy here that legitimately his command is not even clicking on all cylinders, and he's been the most dominant pitcher so far to start the season.
Yeah.
It's amazing that Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, is actually that much better at this point than Shohei Ohtani, the hitter, who is one of the better power bats in the game, I think.
Which is crazy because we only saw a limited sample of Ohtani when he won his Rookie of the Year in 18, right? He started 10 games, but he won his Rookie of the Year because he was a great hitter that happened to have a 3.3 ERA. Threw 130 innings in 21, had a 3.1 ERA. I mean, like, he was great, obviously. He punched out 11 per 9. But last year, like, it was a new level of Shohei, a 2.3 ERA. I feel like this guy is almost going, like, he's not even regressing offensively. That's the thing. I feel like the pitching talent is coming to match his overall aura. I think this guy is getting better as a pitcher while maintaining this incredible offensive profile. And he's just becoming this, like, cyborg type character that we weren't alive for the whole Bo Jackson thing. No. But how can this not be as impressive?
So you kind of just made me think of something that, because I said it quickly, like, okay, Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, is better than the hitter. In terms of, like, dominance, probably. But I'm also just realizing what I saw that motherfucker do at the World Baseball Classic during batting practice, which is something that nobody has done. I talked to a few folks that, you know, work game day for the Marlins, and just asked them, like, you watch a lot of BP. Have you seen anybody else do this? And they said Stanton has actually hit the scoreboard before when he was here. So, you know, when I said I hadn't seen anybody in my experience hit the scoreboard, apparently Stanton was the only other guy that had done it. So it's pretty much Stanton and Ohtani when it comes to that kind of power. Maybe Judge, if he gave him enough tries out there, he'd do it. But the point being, he's in the 0.01% when it comes to power. What's nuts, too, about Ohtani is to start this year, small sample size, but He's hitting 300, 404, 575. So maybe he is going to get better offensively too. That's the fucked up part about all this is he's right now about to hit his physical prime at 28 years old. We might not have seen the best of Shohei Ohtani. That we talked about it with Trout, and that's about how he's getting better. He's not in his physical prime. He's on the back end of it, but he seems to continue to be a sponge, as we talked about. Shohei Ohtani is hitting his physical prime, and his body's getting more used to the rigor of what he does. Because now there's going to be the third season of him really doing it.
Yeah,
he might follow up the last couple of years' performance with something even better. Like, it's just absurd.
Shohei Ohtani has a career 887 OPS. Can I give you some names who had a career OPS at 887 and slightly below? Prince Fielder, Jackie Robinson, Fred McGriff, Eddie Matthews, Rafael Palmeiro, Harmon Killebrew, Will Clark, Sammy Sosa. Come on.
Yeah, well, those guys are good.
Like, come on, dude.
So here's a game. He got a little bit of a later start offensively because he missed some time, and pitching stats aren't going to be as cumulative for him because he's always going to be on a relatively shorter leash, which is the way it should be. You don't need him throwing 200 innings. Yeah. But offensively, what kind of milestones do you think this guy can hit? So I'll give you time to kind of like do the math here. 130 home runs. This is his age 28 season.
Yeah.
So you figure by the end of this season, he could be at 160, right? He'll be at 160. You figure he can, at least offensively speaking, play for another decade. We'll see how he pitches for the next decade. Offensively speaking, he can play for another decade. Does this dude have a shot at 500 homers?
So no, if he hits 30 homers a year for the next 8 seasons after this, if he ends his age 28 season at 160, then he's at 400. So
see, I think that's very conservative.
30 homers a year for 8 years. That takes him through his age 36 season. He's got 400 homers.
I think that's very conservative. He had 34 last year, 46 the year before that. Let's say he averages 35 for 9 years. Where does that put him?
36 a year for 9 years?
Yeah. 35, 36 a year for 9 years.
Let's call it 35 times 9, 315 plus 160, 475.
Like he could, and remember, like, couldn't you see like a 38-year-old Shohei Ohtani that just DHs and we're on milestone watch where he's just still running into baseballs and can kind of limp his way to the finish line to 500?
Yeah, here's a question for you. Do you think he retires as a pitcher but stays active as a hitter and then like fully retires at some point in his career? Do you think he gives up one of them?
I think it would depend on the circumstances. But assuming that, his arm really starts to slow down, like, yes. Because, if he gets to the point where he's like a 5 starter or he's, a middle reliever or a setup guy, like, do you really want to do that anymore? Like, just focus on hitting and preserve the longevity of your career as a big leaguer, period. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I think that's what I think is going to happen, though, right? Couple of years of just DHing when his body's slowing down. He's 38, 39. He's at 470 home runs. Tell me this guy's not going to hit you 20 and 20 and get us to 500. If I had to take a bet, I think I'm taking the Shohei 500. I think I am.
I love that. We are so unbelievably negative. Like here we are talking about his retirement. I've had this conversation with my girlfriend. My dog is 14 years old. He's a little white dog. I think he's got like 2 more years in him. We'll see. But she's got like a young dog. I think her dog is 3 or 4. And, whenever they do something really cute, like I get moved to legit emotion because I'm like, I'm going to be a mess when you die.
Oh no, I'm so messed up with mine are 11. My 2 boys are 11. It freaks me out. I think about it every day.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, we're thinking about like, oh my God, I'm going to be so sad when they die and not like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. I love that. There's nothing bad that could ever happen.
Mourning the end before it even happens. I do that every day with my dogs. It freaks me out.
Right.
I've been doing it with Miggy for 3 fucking years now. I've just been like, oh, he's not the same anymore. Like it's just, right. At least he's on the field. I could be watching him. And instead I'm just like, oh, it's like, it's over. Like he's not what he used to be. Like,
exactly. Like Shohei's 28 years old. He's about to sign a $500 million contract. And we're like, I wonder what his retirement's going to look like.
500 homers is what it's going to fucking look like. It's going to be sick.
I
and
hope
Jack
so.
Jr. is going to be like, Dad, tell me about Shohei. It's going to be very cool.
Never doing the Jack Jr. thing with my kid. No shot. No
Yeah,
shot. Gonna name him something weird like Randall. It's gonna be awesome.
Randall McMullen.
He's not gonna go by Randy. He's gonna go by Rand. Just drop the Y. It's gonna be sick. All right. Last thing on my agenda is Taj Bradley. Talking before his debut at the Trop against Chris Sale and the Boston Red Sox. Zach Eflin hits the IL. Bradley makes his major league debut while the Rays are 11-0. And I think
this is surprising.
It's kind of surprising. It's a lot of pressure, but I think that he can handle it.
So a couple things that I guess we'll be interested to find out, and we will have found out by the time people are listening to this. But just for transparency, how deep are they going to let him go? That's number one, because he's thrown 106 pitches through his first 2 starts in the minors this year in AAA. First start was shaky, and I thought that that's why it was cut short. His velo kind of dipped off a little bit at the end. Then second start, he was lights out, and they still cut him off at like 50-something pitches. So I don't know why they did that. Our theory on the call-up was that it was to stretch him out for the season, presuming that he was going to be called up at the end of the year. That's not the case. He's up now. Very surprising to me. I think he can get outs. I do. I think he's going to – the fastball and the slider are fantastic. He's an athletic pitcher. The splitter has looked like a little bit better. It looks like a viable pitch. He's not going to throw too much, but it's enough of a third look.
Yeah.
But, what do you think the expectations are? Because to me, this was for the Rays. This is a team that's trying to keep the foot on the gas. Yeah. This is a team that we talked about. What makes them so good is that every single day you have a pitcher that will, at the very least, not put you at a disadvantage, which not many rotations can say. Like every once in a while, they're just going to get outmatched with the pitching matchup. And it's that scheduled disadvantage we talk about. That might have happened with the Rays with no Taj, with whoever else. They would have started somebody else and Fleming, and then the 4-5 would have been a little bit more shaky. Like Taj, if he's on, is an advantage if he's on. I just thought it was interesting that they brought him up. Like, what do you think the expectation is out of him? Do they want just 4 or 5? Is he just supposed to be kind of, I feel like they might only want him to just be like a slightly prolonged opener. Like, I don't know if they expect him to be more than a 4-inning guy for them out of the gate with the bullpen that they have.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a chance that he only goes 4, but honestly, I think that this is a we're here and we're competing move from Tampa. I think instead of making a bullpen day win number 12, I think they're turning to their top prospect and a top 40 or 50 prospect in all of baseball right here. And they're almost putting their dick on the table and say, come at us. Yeah. We've got a lot of depth, man. We've got our new $40 million guy go down. Guess what? We're going to one of the best pitching prospects in all of baseball to make his major league debut. We're here to fucking win. I think that's what Tampa's saying right now.
And I think, you look at it, yes, it's a long ass season, but if you can create any kind of separation, and that's what they're doing right now. Obviously, they're 3.5 up on the Yankees. They're 11-0. Yankees are 7-4.
And the Yankees have had a nice start.
Yeah. So have the Blue Jays. You're 3.5 up. You're going to hit some snags through the duration of the season. So if you can keep things rolling, like you said, like that is clearly what their focus is. That's cool. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. I'm excited to see what happens if he pitches well and then guys start to come back. Like what happens when Glasnow comes back and then Eflin comes back. Obviously, Eflin's 15-day IL. It might be longer than that. So they'll probably go 3-4 times around the rotation before either of those guys are fully back. So Taj will have a lot of time, and I think they'll build him up a little bit more. But it is crazy that the back end of their rotation is one of the most exciting young pitching prospects in baseball. And then we're waiting for the other exciting young pitching prospect in Shane Baz. And then we're waiting for one of the most exciting arms in baseball in Tyler Glasnow. A lot of unknown with that trio, but with unknown can come good, can come bad. This version of the unknown can come excellent. And there's 3 guys that could be excellent. 1, 2, 3 in a good rotation. So I'm just fascinated by the Rays, not because they're 11-0, just because there's so much that can happen here. And I'm very excited to find out, how it's all going to look.
It makes me happy to end the pod talking about Shohei and the Rays. Like, hey, here's the positive note. Like, damn, man, this is cool. Baseball is fully back, and we just talked about best player, best team, which is really fun. So that's it for this show. Tomorrow, going to be a survey look at the top 100. Again, that is available editorially on justbaseball.com. Check out our social medias. The top 100 is pumped out there. If you want an in-depth breakdown on each guy as we go 100 through 1, go listen to the Call Up. It's our prospect podcast. But you will get, a glimpse into what the 2022 Just Baseball Top 100 looks like tomorrow. So every other link you need is in the show notes. This has been the Just Baseball Show presented by BetMGM. We'll talk to you on Friday.